In today's episode, we're talking all about balance. What does that mean? What does it look like? So, if you've ever felt like you're either on track or completely off the rails, this episode is for you. And get ready for us to say the word balance a whole lot. Welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. Welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where food and fitness is all about feeling good. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam.
And I really try not to throw the word balance around. I feel like it's kind of lost its meaning in a way, but I do feel like balance is kind of the key to, well, feeling good. So we're going to talk about balance today. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Sam what bevy she brought today.
I brought an energy drink, but I haven't really had much of it yet. So I might pull an Alex and just have half. But I did also have a little tuna sandwich I made, which actually is more of like a snack size. But I had a little tuna sandwich. Prefer an open face style and lots of red onion. And it was very good. I'm glad that technology hasn't gotten to the place where we can smell each other through the screen because my breath probably smells terrible.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Why open face?
You get more insides. Like, my favorite part of a sandwich is the inside, and I think you can fit more when you do that. Someone might argue that point, but you get, well, maybe you don't get more, but it feels like you have more because instead of eating this small sandwich all at one time, it's almost like eating two sandwiches.
I agree. I feel like it's eating 2 sandwiches, even though I absolutely could just smash the other half on top, especially with the tuna and just, like, smash it down, and it really is the same amount of food, but it doesn't feel like it's the same amount of food.
It doesn't add anything to have 2 slices of bread, so and at least for me, like, I prefer a sandwich that has a ton of insides and then less bread, although I love bread, when I'm having a sandwich, I want the focus to be a little bit of bread and then a bunch of whatever goes on the inside.
I love a tuna sandwich. I just inhaled food before we met up for this. I absolutely needed to eat, otherwise I wasn't gonna be able to focus, so I'm boring and I have a water here, and I just slammed, like, 12 Bear chicken nuggets from Costco.
Yum. I love a chicken nugget. I know you are, like, the biggest fan of a chicken tender, but there's something about it, it almost feels like a complete meal.
I Maybe I ate more than 12, I don't know. I made a lot and I was starving, and I'm so happy I did that. My tummy is happy now, I'm happy. If you aren't getting the Bear chicken nuggets, I don't know what you're doing. If you like Chick-fil-A, I really think you'd love them. Sam gets the real good chicken tenders. Either way, everyone should eat a little bit more chicken tenders.
I agree. I'm on board with that.
I feel like that leads us perfectly into talking about balance, because some may argue that they would never touch a chicken tender if they were on a fitness journey, a health journey, but that's where balance comes in. So what do you think people truly mean when they say balance? What does it mean when it comes to health and fitness?
I gotta be honest, when we were talking about this episode before we agreed that this was gonna be the topic, I had a flood of like just different thoughts that came into my mind when it comes to balance because I've spent a lot of my life feeling very weird about that word. Starting back from when I was bodybuilding, especially, the idea of balance was you're not committed enough. Balance doesn't exist in this process because I have goals. I have places to be, things to achieve. And so I remember having that exact conversation with my dad. And I remember him being like, that's crazy. and now my relationship with the word balance is so wholly different. But in a nutshell, I mean, I just have so many different thoughts because my experience with balance has been all over the place.
And I understand in some ways that balance can't always exist. Like when we were doing the marathon, there wasn't a whole lot of balance in my life, and it was actually something I really didn't like about it. And I think it
Mm.
can be in a lot of different areas of your life. There might be certain times where the balance really isn't there. However, I feel like if you can aim for balance overall, like more majority of the time, I really feel like that's where you'll thrive. So when you were bodybuilding and you didn't have balance, it was more like if you had balance and you weren't being disciplined enough, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be at the best when I stepped on stage, right? I would have taken the easy way out, or I wouldn't have reached my best potential stepping on stage. And so I removed any essence of variability, social life, mental health, anything that might be more correlated with creating balance and something that is more maintainable. And like you said, I think that there are a lot of things that create an imbalance if you're a professional athlete, if you're gunning for a new position at your job and you just don't have time for a million other things, then you're going to create this essence of imbalance. But I do think that the world or nature or something will correct you at some point, because if you don't have balance, you're going to break. Something is going to break you and lead you to this position where you recognize and start to appreciate what balance is and what it means to you, so that you don't crash and burn and have these like highs and lows.
Totally. Absolutely. I feel like when you're all in on something and you don't have the balance there, you absolutely will reach a breaking point in one way or another.
Have you ever had any moments or periods of imbalance that you either caught early or didn't catch until you hit that crash and burn?
I just keep coming back to the marathon because it's my most recent time with dealing with not just feeling very out of whack in my life, not living the way I normally do, which I feel is very balanced. I feel like I've really gotten to a place where I know the amount of times I like to work out in a week. I know the foods I like to eat. I know how I feel my best, and that has been the most recent time in my life where it was just so out of whack. It was so disciplined, really, is what it was. I was so disciplined at that time, which is not a bad thing, but I lacked the flexibility that I love. And had that not come to an end because we did the marathon and I got to ease out of that, I don't know how much longer I would have been able to still feel my best, right? Because that's probably what comes first. You start not feeling so good, whether that be mentally or physically, depending on what you're doing. Then slowly the burnout happens.
And I think often people fall into the category too of, have you heard the term golden handcuffs? It's often referred to in like the tech industry, like Silicon Valley, of you make so much money, you're worked to the bone, but you can't leave because of the financial incentive. And I think that happens in a lot of different industries and areas of your life where maybe it's a fitness level that you've reached or a thinness level that you reached. And even though you don't feel great, you still keep doing it because of those golden handcuffs, whatever that is in that scenario, keeping you at this imbalance.
Right? The incentive or the thing you're getting out of it is so great, you don't wanna leave that. So, for fitness, that could be your progress, like, you might be making so much progress, being so disciplined, and turning down the birthday parties and turning down every fun opportunity because you're seeing this reward happen, but what happens at the end of that?
My example of this is, or at least what jumps out first in my mind, is my binge eating relationship where I would be so strict and so quote unquote good with my nutrition, my training. And then I would introduce something that I didn't frequently do, whether it was like going out to eat or giving myself a little treat, and it would just spiral. I would just completely break down after months of restriction and dedication and all of these, some good, some not so great words that you would tie to that level of commitment. And I would just feel so bad about myself, but that was me hitting my breaking point because I didn't implement any form of balance or sustainability. And there I was. And I repeated that process probably dozens of times because I never truly learned from that, or I didn't have the consciousness and the awareness of this is leading to this. And now I recognize, okay, if I skip breakfast because I have this like dinner later, I'm going to want to eat way more. I'm going to be a bottomless pit no amount of food is gonna satiate me, and so I have to be more proactive because I have that awareness about myself, my nature, and maybe it's just human nature, but, I have to act a little bit more proactively now that I know that about myself and also about balance and sustainability.
Right. And do you feel like people really want balance, or do you feel like people really want control?
I don't know, do you feel like the word balance means something completely different to most people?
Totally. I think balance, you think you have to find what your balance is. However, I really
Mhm.
do think that most people would rather be able to control versus have the flexibility because, like we said earlier, you tend to get the thing you're looking for faster. You head in that
Right.
direction much faster. So, telling yourself to have the flexibility, telling yourself to have the balance slows that down.
Right. I think a lot of people do not enjoy the process. They do not enjoy the workouts. They do not enjoy the food. And that could be just a matter of you chose the wrong thing. But I think a lot of people dislike the process. And in turn, they want to shorten it. They want the quickest results in the fastest amount of time. And you can certainly do that with a more extreme approach. But there's always gonna be a downside to when you do that, and I think for both of us, our idea of balance is built on enjoying those things, and so it doesn't feel like restriction, it doesn't feel like a huge effort to go to the gym because it's just habitual, and it's not something that we dislike so much, and therefore, it's really not that hard for us to do it.
At this point in time, for sure. I definitely think it just gets easier as things become a habit. And just to give people the benefit of the doubt, I don't always think it's that they don't enjoy it. Some people, for sure, they haven't found what they like to do yet. They haven't found the foods they like. They need a little bit more time there. I think for some people, it's the end result. Right. So you're just trying to skip past all this stuff because you have this end goal. So you let go of the flexibility, you let go of the balance so that you can get to that end result faster. Do you feel like people struggle with balance more when it comes to workouts or when it comes to their nutrition?
Definitely nutrition. I mean, your workout is 1/24th potentially of your entire day, half of which you're asleep. So it's a really short period of time compared to nutrition, which is a full-time activity, taking care of, eating what helps you feel really good and supports the activity that you want to do and the results that you're trying to achieve. And there's also so many more, I don't wanna say temptations, but, like, there's so many more reasons for you not to follow a specific plan that you have for yourself, whether it's happy hour with your friends or a family holiday or simply you're running out the door and you don't have time to put something together. There's so many more excuses or reasons not to stick to a plan that you have nutritionally than it is for fitness. Would you agree?
Completely. And like you said, a workout is such a small part of your day. So you can really convince yourself to do that thing. And usually, once that hour is done, you're so glad you did it. It didn't take that long. Now you feel great. And now it's done. Whereas
Mhm.
nutrition, food, it's your entire day. It's your entire life, really.
Yeah, I just saw a video. I wonder if you also saw this video because I feel as if our algorithms are very similar. But it was this girl saying that you have to earn balance. And I hated it when I first watched it, but I've been thinking about it a lot more since I first watched it. Obviously, I knew we were going to record this episode, and I am curious your thoughts because there is an aspect that we previously talked about. If you're results driven, you have something that you want to accomplish, there is this sense of imbalance that might need to happen for you to create true balance. So I'm curious your initial thoughts of that idea.
I'd love to hear like more about what that person meant.
So the video, in a larger sense, she says you have to earn balance, but she also brings up how building muscle is super important to building metabolism, building energy expenditure throughout the day. So if you have more muscle, your body's burning more muscle or more energy at rest. Therefore, you can eat more and be more flexible and have a little bit more freedom with food and things in your life because your body isn't functioning off of very little, which a lot of women tend to fall into that category due to extreme diet cycles and overexercise and not providing enough time to create a foundation of building your metabolism muscle so that you can have a little bit more flexibility and freedom throughout your day without the weight gain accompanying those types of behaviors.
I think that naturally happens when you do start a fitness journey because, like we said in the beginning, you are often really excited about whatever thing, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a marathon, what it's this new thing that you are going full force into and you have this excitement. So that imbalance happens probably naturally. And then you find out what things are working for you, what things are not working for you. And I think that's where balance becomes something that you have to learn. I don't think that it comes naturally to most people. I think you have to figure out what that is for you and then you start to play around with it, right? So maybe you are full force on this fitness journey and right now you feel like you have not a lot, not great balance. You don't know how to start incorporating that, right? So maybe you're working out 5 days a week and you have your meals to a T. Like you know what the breakfast, lunch, and dinner is, your snacks, you feel great. Everything's moving and grooving in the right way. Well, we already said you're only going to last so long before that might take a turn for the opposite end and you burn out. So you start learning, right? You start going, okay, well, I know that if I go out to eat on Saturday, I still feel pretty good. And I know that if I swap out my Thursday workout for a walk, I still feel pretty good. So I kind of agree with her in a different way. I feel like you naturally learn to start incorporating this over time. Otherwise, you do what you did for a while, which is restrict, burnout until you get to
Mhm.
that point. I think that if you want to, you will get to that point.
There's also something about the word earn that, like, immediately turns me off and that I don't like, and that could just be a trigger of mine of, like, you don't have to earn food, you don't have to earn anything, but I think if you swap out earn with
Mhm.
learn, and it creates more of that educational of, I'm trying these things and it's teaching me these things, and that's a part of the process, I guess, which might be a little bit more of our translation in a what we feel is a more healthy approach to looking at balance. And I will say the other thing that comes to mind with earning balance or learning balance is when I went through this whole journey of extreme restriction, chronic dieting, weight fluctuations, and finally got to a point where I was like, okay, no, I need to find something that's maintainable because I'm driving myself absolutely crazy, gaining 30 pounds, losing 30 pounds, and doing that on repeat. And so I went on this at the time, it was called like all in journey. I removed all expectation, restriction. I just did what I wanted to do, not what I thought I needed. So instead of constantly ordering the same thing at a restaurant, I said, what do I want? Right. So I started functioning from that place of what do I want instead of what do I feel I have to have or need. And so it was a big pivot in a different direction. And I thought I felt great. And I thought I was being really healthy because and I was in a lot of ways, more mentally than probably physically. And then I started really reflecting. This was a couple of years later, reflecting on my nutritional habits, my training, and there was not a lot of direction to either. I still maintained some habits that were great, but I certainly was not really in control. I wasn't really taking much care or being proactive about a lot of things. And so when I started putting some of those things in place, I had this realization maybe a couple months in of I didn't recognize or realize how bad I felt because now I feel so much better. And it was this moment where, again, I didn't think I felt bad before. I didn't think I looked bad. I didn't think anything was wrong. but I did have in my head, okay, these are healthier habits or these are things that I should focus on for longevity, health, being able to do what I want to do into my 80s or 90s. And so I started focusing on those things, and all of a sudden I started to feel incredible. And I think that when it comes to balance, there's only so much you're capable of knowing before you start doing something. So, my idea of what balance looked like a couple of years ago was based on how I felt in that moment. Now, fast forward to a couple years now, my idea of balance is completely different than it was a couple of years ago because now I have this new higher level of feeling good that I'm striving to achieve. And a piece of that is definitely like performance. I want to feel strong and capable, and it's fun for me now, whereas before I maybe didn't care very much about performance markers, and now I do. And so I think that your idea of balance really changes and adjusts through time, but especially through experience and exposure of, like you said, trying different things, new things, and but also sticking with them. Because if I hadn't stuck with a lot of these habits, then I wouldn't know how good it could feel later on.
I absolutely think that balance changes with the seasons of life. Absolutely, 100%. You have to figure out what balance is going to look like for you, and I wish that I could prescribe that to you. I wish that I could say it's 3 days of working out, and it's going out to eat 2 times a week, and it's X, Y, or Z, but I can't. You have to do that. But I can ask Sam what it looks like for you in a week.
I don't know that I look at balance across a week. I probably look at it more balance across a month or a couple of months. And a big piece of, I think, for me, feeling balanced is being intuitive with my needs, my wants, and also enforcing that for myself. I think I have a really easy time saying, oh no, I don't want to do that. Or, okay, yeah, let's plan that thing, even if I don't want to. I don't put myself in a position where I'm overextending myself. I think I do a pretty good job of like balancing that out with saying yes, saying no, and checking in with myself and what I need on a weekly, monthly, even larger scale basis. It's so different depending on what's going on in my life, but I do look at balance as okay, like I have this coming up in a month, then I'm going to create the counterbalance to that now. I do think about that pretty often, I guess. I look forward a lot. I'm a big planner. That feels really good to me to know what's coming, to feel like I'm in control, which you brought up control before too, and that I get to choose. I like to know that I get to choose. And sometimes I don't get to choose, and that's okay. But I balance that out in other ways and I try and figure out how that's going to look for me.
I like that you look at it as a bigger picture. I like that you're looking at what's to come. And then now you can figure out how you want to deal with that in the right now, in the now. So if you have a vacation scheduled next month where you know that you're going to be off routine, not doing the things that you normally do, you're going to do the counterbalance to that right now. That might be helpful for people who are struggling with the control versus the flexibility with the balance. That still gives you some control. You feel like you're still in control of all of it versus being like, oh, whatever, I just have to completely go with the flow. Like maybe that's not you. Maybe your brain doesn't work like that. And you can't be completely go with the flow and just let go of all control. Some people can, some people can't. So being able to plan in a way that allows for this flexibility and then you know that you have more control of it right now, I don't think that's a bad thing.
How far ahead do you think that you look as far as creating some kind of control? Because I would say I look like a month ahead, but it also depends on what I've got going on. So if I don't have anything going on, then maybe I'm just looking at the week. But what would you say is your looking into the future to create balance?
That's a
What do
really
you
good
see?
question because I'm going out of town next week and then I'm going out of town the following month. And I have not thought one time about a single thing about that. Not one time. So that actually I love that you are so different in that because I haven't even thought about that. I am way more go with the flow. I'm just going to let whatever happens happen. Totally case by case and how long I'm gonna be gone. Both of these are not very long, and I know that I could go for a run if I wanted to go for a run instead. Like, there are things that I'll just do in the moment, though, that will dictate what I feel balanced or how I feel balanced. So I'm not looking into the future, thinking about what I can do right now or how I'm gonna approach it. I'll deal with that as it comes because I'm at a place, though, where I know that if nothing happens on those days that I'm gone, I'm gonna feel okay still because I'm at that place that just works for me right now.
Do you feel like you earned that flexibility?
Well, no, I think I've learned that flexibility. And that's immediately what I said earlier when you told me the video of her saying earned. I think it was probably her just getting people to stop on the video, just to give her the benefit of the doubt. Earned to me feels like almost a little negative. Like we've tried so hard to tell ourselves that you don't have to earn your food, you don't have to earn your rest days, that using that word feels a little bit wrong. I think she probably was just trying to hook people into the video, but my mind immediately went to, you do have to learn it. And I do think I have. I don't think that I stopped cheerleading, started working out, and immediately knew how to balance everything. Absolutely not.
I do think she meant it literally in the sense of you have to build muscle to be able to earn flexibility, to be able to go out maybe as much as you want to go out. Or you have to build muscle to earn a higher deficit. I think she meant it very literally. And scientifically, she is correct that if you build more muscle, you build your metabolism, your body will expend more energy at rest, which means that you can diet on a much higher caloric intake than somebody who has less muscle than you do. I do see that. And I mean, I always want to encourage people to lift weights because it has given me a lot of freedom and flexibility with whether that's mentally or physically. I think both can relate in this scenario. I mean, there's just so much benefit to it. I don't know how else to spin it in a way that gets people excited about building muscle. And I think you can hear something, the exact same thing 10 different times, but some person puts it in a way that it resonates with you and it gets you excited and it makes you feel more comfortable with building muscle and eating more food because they've tied it to this thing that again gets you excited about it, where we live in a world typically it's not celebrated and it's not encouraged, and women are scared to put on muscle and they're scared to be in the gym and lift weights and eat more. And so I think that even if we're saying the same thing but we're saying it in different ways, hopefully it gets people to the gym, lifting weights, eating appropriately to fuel that performance, and almost more importantly, like to fuel the recovery and the muscle building process.
I do struggle with the word earn though, because it just reinforces all of the thoughts we're often all trying to combat, which is, I don't deserve to eat if I'm not skinny. I don't, that's a tough one. That's so tough. However, I feel like the right message is going to match like for the right person. So if that worked for the person she was talking to, then great, but it doesn't resonate with me.
It's a sticky one. It's a sticky word choice for sure. And I mean, it brings in the idea of like, is this a healthy approach? Is this a healthy way of looking at things? Is it a healthy way of thinking of things? And I'm always reminded of when people are in a really extreme period of their life, or it seems that way to other people. Let's say I'm watching you train for this marathon, you're putting in hours a week, even hours a day training for this marathon, and I'm sitting on my couch and it makes me feel like I'm a lazy piece of shit and I'm feeling negatively about myself because of what you're doing. I'm going to say, Alex, that's so unhealthy. You're not living a balanced life. This is not healthy. I'm worried about you. Right. And I think we all tend to have thoughts about what other people are doing. And hopefully we're not expressing them all the time, because I do think that they're not always constructive and they're not always coming from the best of places. It's more about you than it is about the other person. But it is an interesting thought of when we see people behaving in a certain way that to the outside world or to the general population, it seems imbalanced because what do you mean you have time to go to the gym 5 days a week for an hour more? And then that makes us feel like, "Oh, well, I could never do that. That's not healthy for me," right? And that might be true. I don't know. I'm not passing judgment, but there is always, I think, that lingering conversation generally of, is that healthy? Is that extreme? And being able to determine and distinguish the difference between that is, and it's so case by case, right? Like, how could we possibly ever
You
know?
can't, which is why you don't get a say in what someone else's balance is. Obviously, if that's your loved one, then that's something that you have to like keep in mind if it's something that you need to have a conversation about, but only you can decide what your balance is. And I think you have to get so real with yourself because I think that you can talk yourself into almost anything. So whether you're on one end of the spectrum or not, you can usually find a way to make an excuse as to why something is okay, why it is balanced for you. So you have to be so real with yourself and be like, am do I feel good? Am I the most balanced that I can be? Or maybe you do get real with yourself and you're like, you know what? No, I'm not in a place of balance, but I know that right now, right? Whether that be marathon training or the promotion coming up. And telling yourself, like, I'm not, but I know that in 2 months, I'm gonna be able to slow down a little bit. So, I think it's a sliding scale.
I just saw a video about I'm sure you watch these too, the "Am I the Asshole?" like the Reddit ones. So the one I just was listening to, because often, and this is so shameful, but I will play my TikTok while I'm like cooking and like listening to stories. I love a longer form video. And this one, I was cooking dinner last night and this man wrote on Reddit that and this is like the tagline, it was, "My wife is an ultra, like a marathon runner, and it's ruining our marriage." And he starts off by saying that he got her into it. Like, first, it was triathlons, and it was something that they could do together. And then they had kids. She got really into yoga. I don't think that's an important element of the story, but she eventually gets really into running. And she's waking up super early to go on the run. He's taking care of the kids in the morning. And then he would go and, maybe do whatever he was going to do on his lunch break. He would work out his lunch break, come home. They'd have maybe an hour together. And then she would go to sleep early because she was getting up early. Long story short, they didn't have any time together. And he was essentially saying, "I'm so lonely." And he's brought it up to her a few times. In her running journey, she's winning races. Like, she is committed. She is an athlete. She is taking this on as like a huge piece of her identity, right? And she's spending more time with these running groups than she is her family sometimes, as per husband's explanation of the scenario. And it's I mean, I can see how that can, especially as someone who's prepped for a marathon, I can imagine how that can take a toll on a relationship because you're not able to spend time together. And what do you do, right? Like, to me, it looks as if she's creating a very unbalanced lifestyle and something is going to break in the process. And it seemed to be her relationship with her husband was the thing that was breaking as a result of an imbalanced lifestyle. But what are your
Well, I have a
thoughts?
lot of immediate thoughts, like one of them being like, "Come on, man. Like she's not gonna be an ultra marathon runner forever." Like, she's in her prime right now.
Well, he did ask her to not plan more races. All of her travel time has been committed to like going out for different events. She skipped their anniversary to go run a marathon or to go pace a marathon because they were going to pay for her to stay in a hotel. And so she went off and did that on their anniversary. He stayed back with the kids because they have kids. And so obviously I'm team husband. But imagine the resentment of asking your partner not to do something that they love, that they're so committed to. But at the same time, I've been this woman before in my pursuit of a lot of fitness related things, not performance level of, winning marathons necessarily, but like I've been that person too. And so, from my perspective, I can see an imbalance and what I perceive to be an unhealthy relationship with one thing, and it's contributing to a unhealthy relationship literally with her husband.
I kind of feel like this conversation can go so many different ways because many people are their partner is really high up in their job and they work 12-hour days and they start at 4 a.m. or they don't get home till 9 p.m. This kind of happens all the time. There is no balance and something is breaking. And I'm not saying I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not saying that there even is a right answer. Just the point being, if there is no balance in whatever area of your life, you get to some sort of burnout, some sort of breaking point. So I think that the sooner you can figure it out on your own fitness journey, what it's going to look like for you, I think you're going to, first of all, enjoy the process so much more. Like you were saying earlier, a lot of people maybe don't enjoy the process. I think that learning to incorporate balance will exponentially drive up, like, how much enjoyment you're getting out of fitness and health and life, right? Because you're doing all of the things that are making you feel physically good, and you're doing all of the things that are making you feel mentally good.
Well, here's a question. If you are somebody who struggles to create boundaries and you're not able to establish your ideal sense of balance, let's say you have kids banging on your door, you're not able to get an adequate or desirable amount of sleep, or you have friends who are big partiers and your only time to hang out with them is out at the bars or happy hour, or these are things that, I mean, of course you love your kids, they're your priority, of course you love your friends and the social aspect of that is really important to you, but at what point is it taking more than it's giving? And how do you establish balance? And I think boundaries is a really big element of balance that maybe isn't always thought of.
I thought about that earlier when you were talking about learning how to say yes or no to things, because that goes to my point of being real with yourself and actually saying, like, what do I want? What do I want to do? What makes me feel my best? So that is a boundary. It's learning how to say no to those things, or learning that it's okay to say yes to those things too. However, with kids, you might be in one of those seasons where the balance doesn't exist, or you need to find it in a different way.
Yeah, I'm of course not the person to ask about that because I mean, I have so many friends having kids right now and they just quite literally don't have the time. But then I think of my own self and how important that is to me. And maybe it becomes less so because you have this other thing that is so much more important to you, which is taking care of these little humans that if you don't take care of yourself, then that's okay that day or that week or whatever, that month, that season. Maybe that's okay. But I just, for myself, like I can't imagine being in that position and doing that, but then I think time gets away from you and your comfort level with certain things starts to change and like I brought up before, like your feel good level starts to change and you don't even recognize how bad you feel because you've eliminated some of those feel good habits because it's just become normal. And you only start to realize how much better you could feel when you go through the pain phase of reintroducing these things because they're so out of your habit realm or your normal day to day that it is kind of a struggle in the beginning, but then you start to feel the benefits of those things.
I mean, we're definitely not the ones to ask since we don't have kids, but I do think that's where balance changes. Yeah, you do have new priorities, but you deserve to take care of yourself. It's just probably going to look different. Is there anything now in your life that you don't stress about that you did? So let's maybe bring it back to when you were bodybuilding and you kind of didn't have this balance. And then you started introducing some flexibility into your life. There were probably some things that stressed you out a little more than others that maybe now you don't stress about nearly as much or if at all.
Going out to eat was probably a really big one because I eliminated it for so long and I thought so low of it. I assumed so much sugar, so much salt. I had a big fear over, like, ordering even a Diet Coke and it not being a Diet Coke and it being, like, a regular Coke. Same thing with coffee, like, going to a coffee shop, and if they didn't use, like, a sugar-free, I was like, "This would be the end of me." Obviously, I wouldn't know because they made it, I'm just drinking it, but I had that, like, lingering fear of, like, not trusting anything aside from what I could control inside of my home, and that I was cooking and I was preparing and I was weighing. So going out to eat or doing anything outside of my home was scary. Eating certain foods, same thing. I built up this idea of how calorically dense things were that really wasn't probably rooted in reality. And I had a very low respect level for my own body and its ability to digest, use energy if it was outside of kind of that comfort zone that I had created.
When you felt like you were fearful of eating anything outside of your kitchen, going out to eat, going to get a coffee, could you recognize in those moments that you did not have balance or flexibility in your life? Or were you able to excuse it away by saying something else?
Maybe I recognized it, and that ties back to that conversation that I had with my dad of being like, "Balance doesn't exist here because I'm a winner, like, I'm gonna" whatever. I had this idea of what I was trying to achieve, which, to be honest, I just wanted to be small, and I for the first time in my life, I was accomplishing that goal. I was seeing myself get smaller, and for someone who felt they had 0 control over their body, and now all of a sudden this was how I was going to control it, and here's how I was going to become smaller and thinner. It was addicting. It was so addicting that I could excuse away any action that could be perceived as unhealthy because I want to look this way.
What would you say to someone who feels like they're on one end of the spectrum? It doesn't matter which end. Maybe they're on the results driven end and things they're going so hard on that, or maybe they're on the complete opposite end and they aren't doing anything health and fitness related right now. What would you say would be the first thing to introduce?
A big thing that actually helped me was journaling and reflecting and wondering and like this curiosity of like why am I going through the same painful process over and over and over again to look a certain way, like why can't like what's I had this thought of like is something wrong with me, like why can't I maintain a healthy lifestyle, like I can create all of these results all day all night. I'm incredibly great at losing weight and gaining weight. I had this thought of why can't I do this thing. And so I started to journal and ask myself just deeper questions to better understand myself, what I wanted. And through that self exploration, I was able to make real change. I needed to put my mental health first, fix my relationship with myself, fix my relationship with body image, whether that was what I expected of myself, what I wanted for myself, or what I thought other people wanted from me. Like I had to fix that first.
You have to do some self exploration. And I think a journal prompt is 100% the way to go. You can really jot down your thoughts and let it all out on paper. And maybe you won't even realize the things you're about to say. Like you don't even realize why you're doing the things that you're doing. And you might find some answers in there. What do you think, just off the top of your head? Maybe you don't have any, but what do you feel like some good questions to ask yourself could be?
Well, I actually created an entire journaling book that has all of the questions that I felt the most impacted by, and so that I have, that I sell, that I think so highly of. I put a lot of time and effort into it, obviously, but the reason I found it to be so beneficial, those questions, is because it got me to where I'm at now.
Okay, shout out. I had no idea that you had journal prompts. It sounds like I just set that up for, like, I teed that up for her to sell it, but I didn't. I had no idea. So that's actually a great idea. If you need some journal prompts and you feel like you're a little out of whack when it comes to balance in your life, that might be a good place to start because I think that getting real with the things that you want, with the way that you want your life to look, with the way that you want your fitness to look and health to look, it takes some self exploration. And there's nothing better than a journal to get you started.
I ask myself questions all day. Like, I'm in my head asking myself questions, but I actually don't really find the answers to those questions quite often. I am very easily distracted. I probably spend way too much time listening to podcasts and scrolling on social media. So while the questions may linger in my mind, it's when I sit down and I actually thoughtfully reflect and write down the answer. And I don't just come up with like the most immediate quick thought that I have about that question. When I really sit with it and I consider it for a while, it makes a huge difference.
Or you can do what I do, which is I often go on a walk without my phone or any headphones or anything. And I quite literally sit in my head, which is crazy. Sam thinks that's insane that I just go for a walk with my dogs just in silence. However, it'd be a great time to look at the journal prompt and just start thinking about it. You just sit in your head and you can sit in silence and think about the answers to those questions. And I think when it comes to flexibility, balance, like I said, it's a sliding scale, it's a learning curve. And I don't think that you're going to get it right the first time. I think that you might go a little too far on one end of the spectrum and then you realize you have to countercorrect that a little bit. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. And I mean, we spend so much time in our physical world, what's right in front of us, what we're eating, what we're doing in the gym, and I say I definitely spend more time focusing on those things than I do my mental wellness and whatever that looks like to me, right? But I think if I spent more time every day, whether that's reflecting, journaling, just spending time in my thoughts because I am very avoidant. And so I will avoid my thoughts, my feelings, because I want what I'm doing to be the thing that's the best for me, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes you have to sit in that uncomfortable reality of maybe I'm not doing the best thing for me, whether that's objectively with nutrition or fitness. Maybe it's not allowing for enough of the social elements or even just the break from rigidity. Those are all things that I think I will hide from that reality because I get really comfortable in being strict. And so journaling and forcing myself to really think and sit and think about myself, right? Instead of being like, oh, what's everybody else doing online?
I think that people also really do want answers sometimes versus I have to sit and think about what's going to be best for me. Do you feel like there is a certain amount of workouts or a certain food or whatever the case that equals balance, like 3 days of working out, that looks like balance, or eating this looks like balance? Or do you feel like there is no answer to that?
You have the daily or the weekly minimums that is recommended for average health, right? So it's 150 minutes of physical activity per week. You could look at it in that perspective of like, okay, that's the minimum. Like that's what I'm looking for as far as balance goes is, having some strenuous activity throughout the week that comes out to be that number. But you have such varying starting points. You have such varying, like for me, that wouldn't be enough. I would I would want more. And so for me, my absolute minimum is going to be different than what I think the general population minimum is. But that's also me right now. Now, me a year from now, who knows? Like maybe 150 is going to feel great. At this point in my training, I've accumulated this foundation and this base where more than that does feel like my ideal balance.
I do think looking at it at a point of like, here's my minimum. And you can not going off of like the guidelines, let's just say for yourself, you can maybe build out what your minimums are. You know that you feel your best at minimum with, let's say, 3 workouts a week. I kind of have done that for myself where at minimum, I want to move every single day for 30 minutes. Now, some days that might be more because it's an entire yoga class or it's an entire workout, or maybe it's just a 30-minute walk. but I have my minimum of moving 30 minutes a day. I'm going to feel my best. And then I have my minimum of kind of like the 80-20 rule where I have balanced, plates in front of me when it comes to the food I'm eating each day. 80% nutrient dense things, 20% is my chocolate and my mochi and maybe some snacks in between. That's where I, at minimum, feel my best. I also, at minimum, know that I feel great if I turn the TV off like an hour before bed and I read my book. So I've kind of built out these things where I know at the very least, I feel good with these things. And then I can allow so much flexibility around those things. So I think having this base, this like starting point, is a good place to work off of.
I like all of those. Those are all really balanced. I also know that when I take a week off from yoga or a couple weeks off from yoga, I can feel that. And so for me, at least one day of yoga a week helps me feel incredible. And I do crave more of it. Like I would prefer 2 to 3 times a week of yoga. But if I only get one, I'm happy with that. I think just the older you get, the more, and actually, that's not fair. I don't know if it's the older you get or if it's more so the more you move, the more you pay attention to the food that you eat, the more aware of how you feel you become. I think that's actually a big piece of it is how you feel in your body is a reflection of how much attention you're giving to that thing. I do think that, yeah, maybe it's not age, it's more so just I've built up enough repetition with exercise and paying attention to food that I do know what I need to feel really good. Protein, fiber. I focus on the more important things to create balance. So that's actually one way that I have created balance is instead of focusing on the tiny little things, I focus almost exclusively on the big things and then the tiny things I let go. So it's kind of how I've been able to create more mental space for things and also other things outside of just nutrition that also matter.
I don't think you were wrong though by saying a part of it is age because a part of it is learning how to set boundaries. A part of it is learning how to say no to certain things or say yes to certain things. And I do think that that's something that comes with age as you just feel more confident in your ability to trust yourself and speak up for yourself. I wish that there was something I could prescribe and say that this is exactly what you're going to do in order to achieve balance. But if you've taken away anything from this episode, you've realized that you have to decide what that's going to look like for you. And it might look different 6 months from now, 2 years from now. It might look different last year compared to this year. But balance isn't about being perfect, it's about building something that you can maintain. And hopefully that is enjoyable so that you can do it forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, I actually really like that you brought up not being perfect. I actually think that that might be a hindrance to a lot of people achieving balance and feeling really good in the routines that they have and the escape from maybe a routine. So I think that leaning into being imperfect, being human, right? Letting yourself be a human being who is full of mistakes and full of pivots and adjustments. I think that's a really important thing to remind yourself of.
Something I say in all my challenges and programs is consistency, never perfection. We're never looking for perfection. So let go of that.
That's it for today. Take what you need from this episode, leave the rest, and trust that you're doing better than you think. Thank you for being here. If you liked this episode, please rate and review. We'll talk to you soon. Until then, keep feeling good.